I've had this trip on my bucket list for a very, very long time. It seems like I waited for an eon. Today I'll be exploring Maryland, the old line state. My first stop takes me to Hyattsville, and would you take a look at this car? This has some crazy decorations. This car started as a 1995 Chevy Caprice, and then added the headlights and grille from a 1946 Buick Roadmaster. Since then, that artwork added to this car has gone next level. This car is the brainchild of artist A. Clark Bedford. He wanted to create something unique, not just for the car, but also his house and his van. Take a look at them. So the road. The neighbors must be thrilled. I'll be taking a closer look at the house and van, but first...
Hey guys, Emily, welcome everyone! I had a very busy day today in the state of Maryland. I'll be meeting up with a very dear friend who lives in the district. Well, they're more like family. I'll be spending the day going to see some roadside attractions and other points of interest. Let's see what the day brings. Thanks for joining me. Let's go!
A. Clark Bedford created the unique Vanadu Art House. It includes his house, the car I just saw, and the van parked in front of the house. First, here's a quick map of where I'll be today. Right now, I'm just outside Washington, D.C. Then I'll see some other roadside attractions inside the Beltway, which is Interstate 495. Then I'll make my way to Baltimore, and then later this afternoon, I'll head west on Interstate 70 and finish the day in Hagerstown. A. Clark Bedford said he created the Vanadu Art House because all the homes in his neighborhood looked the same, but he wanted his house to be, quote, abnormal. This vehicle is most definitely abnormal. The back looks like it was taken from a Thunderbird, part of it kind of looks like a hearse, and there are all sorts of objects welded onto the frame of the vehicle. The bus in the front of the house, including the front yard, are completely covered with these crazy decorations. Lots of old bicycle tires. Heck, I see whole bicycles in this collection. This van and the car are still driven today. Bedford said he drives these vehicles to the nearby Home Depot. I guess it's legal to drive them in Maryland. My friend said this gave them a Rudyard Kipling vibe. This reminded me of those two homes in a Phoenix neighborhood that filled up the front yards with a bunch of signs, statues, and other items. Bedford said that his neighborhood is filled with interesting people and boring houses, and he doesn't understand why others don't want to create something like this for their own homes. This may explain some of Bedford's thinking. Bedford had worked as an artist for his entire life, and worked as an art conservator for the Smithsonian. When Bedford retired, he decided to completely immerse himself with his art. This started with welding some bling of flare to one of his cars. Then it moved on to his other vehicles, and then he went crazy with decorating this Ford F-150 Econoline van. Thus, Vanadu was born. Then he decorated his house with a similar artwork. He does seem to have a fascination with round objects. I wonder if that means anything. And that seems to extend to making things reminiscent of our solar system. By the way, he encourages photos and sharing on social media. Bedford was heavily influenced by the, quote, weird, threatening influence of the Victorian age and the U.S. Industrial Revolution. Bedford found that period to be astonishing, scary, and horrible, which makes it artistically exciting for him. He says every time he goes to Home Depot, 15 people come up to him to compliment. But Bedford points out that none of them will try to do the same thing. Perhaps that's the message he's trying to convey. A. Clark Bedford works on his house and vehicles every day. They are consistently changing, and he enjoys being surrounded by his art. The Vanadu House is not far from the DC-Maryland state line, just minutes away from the National Mall, so go check it out. My next stop is at the University of Maryland. Once again, I'm visiting another college campus. Even though I'm nearly halfway with my own college career close to my home, some might think that's strange, but this is the Adele H. Stamp Student Union. The University of Maryland is the home of the Terrapins, or Terps, and their mascot name is Testudo. One of Maryland's best-known alumni is Jim Henson, and he's been honored with this wonderful bronze sculpture in front of the Student Union building. The statuette bench features Jim Henson and his most famous Muppet creation, Kermit the Frog, having a conversation seated on this granite bench. Also notice Kermit the Frog has his left hand placed on Jim Henson's right arm, which really embodied the legacy of kindness that Jim Henson showed. But did you know Kermit was created on this very campus during Henson's time here? In 1955, his grandfather passed away, and he consoled himself by creating a puppet of his mother's felt turquoise coat and glued two halves of a ping pong ball to the top. This puppet was what it would eventually become Kermit the Frog. Henson met his future wife, Jane Neville, in a puppetry course. They created a local TV show called Sam and Friends. The show featured similar puppetry to the original Kermit and won a local Emmy Award in 1958 for Best Local Entertainment Program. This was truly Jim Henson's calling, and this was when his career took off. Jim Henson graduated with a home economics degree in 1960, and in 1978 received an honorary doctorate in fine arts. Every year on September 24th, they celebrate Henson Day. After Jim Henson passed away in 1990, he was honored at the Maryland football team's homecoming game. And that homecoming game was played over there, in that stadium in the distance, where the Terrapins play their home games. Alright, moving on. I'm now in Tacoma Park, at the corner of Erie and Flower Avenues. I'm going to another roadside attraction, which makes use of something that used to be at many street corners and businesses, but almost never used today. It's right here at this former payphone. But a few years ago, a resident of Tacoma Park changed this phone so you can receive bird calls. That's right, instead of getting a call from a person, you get a call from a bird. Actually, you can get 9 different bird calls. You press the button from 1 to 9, and each of those numbers will give you a different bird song. And best of all, instead of giving a quarter for making a call, getting a bird call is absolutely free. In 2016, David Schulman came up with the idea to convert this payphone to send bird calls. Each bird is local to this area, and I'm hearing plenty of birds just standing there. And this is probably where I should have brought my lav mic, because the birds tweeting all around me are mixing with the bird calls from the phone. I might revisit this payphone when I return in late March. Then I'll see if I can grab some of the audio. But this is a cool idea, and worth a quick stop. Plus, it could bring business to the stores in front of this old phone. Now on the Capitol Beltway, which is Interstate 495, I'm about to get on Interstate 95 northbound, which will lead me to Baltimore. Baltimore was the home of Edgar Allan Poe, and by the time I make it to Baltimore, it'll be time to quilt some lunch. But I do have some stops before I reach Baltimore, so let's check those out real quick. I'm at this shopping destination in the town of Savage. This is an old factory called Savage Mill Tower that was converted into a shopping mall. Next to the mall is the historic bridge, which I'm here to see. This bridge was built in 1852 and is one of the oldest wrought iron bridges still standing in the United States. It used to be a railroad line going across the Little Patuxent River. Today, it only carries pedestrians. This is the Bullman Truss Railroad Bridge. It was added to the National Register of Historic Places and is a National Historic Civil Engineering Landmark. Up here it says, built by the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, patented in 1852. I'm not sure what the other years mean, but I did find out this bridge was in a different place and moved here in 1887. There's a little Patuxent River we were crossing over, and it's a little weird seeing the water between those railroad ties. I feel like there should be more support, don't you? Today this bridge is part of the Savage Mill Trail, which mostly follows this tributary. This is a nice area about halfway between Washington, D.C. and Baltimore. There really are some nice places in this area, nice little towns filled with history. And it's centrally located between Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, so there are two large cities to choose from to go to work. This marker says that Wendell Bowman was the inventor of this type of bridge. This bridge is the sole surviving example, and it's also the very first bridge in the country that was made in the fashion entirely of iron. There were 100 of this type of bridge, and this is the only one left. This marker mentions the importance of this old railroad line with linking Savage Mill with Annapolis, Baltimore, and Washington, especially with transporting Union troops during the Civil War. This old iron bridge is well maintained. It had been refurbished in 1983 and again in 2000. And you can see the new road just over there. And they have to maintain it regularly, otherwise this bridge will rust and become completely unusable, even to pedestrian traffic. Many of the hundreds of others that were built in the middle of the 19th century had to be replaced due to rust. I'm not sure when the wooden walkway was built though. Maybe it was done as part of building out the trail. One last look from the new road's point of view. This is a beautiful old bridge, and I heard Savage Mill is a great place to shop and eat, so check that out while you're here. Alright, let's move on. Now in Glen Burnie, which is a suburb of Baltimore, I'm at the corner of Lamar and Midland Roads. I hear that corner is a very interesting house. I feel like this may be better seen in person rather than on video. But take a look at this. This house is a unique decoration where the trees have thousands, maybe tens of thousands of small mirrors hanging from them. It's kind of like they're covered with ice. This acorn house looks like it belongs in the mountains too. What do you think of these trees? Do they look like they're covered in ice, or maybe tinsel like a Christmas tree? The owner of this house is Bob Benson, a mirror artist. He created the Universal Tree of Light in front of the American Visionary Art Museum in Baltimore. He has a studio inside his home where he creates these small mirrors, as well as mirrored ornaments he calls splashies. Benson was inspired by seeing a single strand of double-sided mirrors, and from there he made mirrored discs similar to what the ancient Greeks and Romans used to bring good luck. Benson has always admired art, and he says while he respects people who make beautiful things, he also says there is a thin line between the sublime and the ridiculous. I do notice there are fewer mirrors on the trees now than some of the pictures and video taken a few years ago. According to RoadsideAmerica.com, one visitor was greeted by Bob Benson, and he gave an in-depth tour of the yard, his studio, and his shed. The shed was filled with mirrors inside. It must have been amazing to see where all that artwork is made and see these trees close up. I'd love to get some video of those little mirrors really close instead of zoomed in from the road. Continuing north on Highway 295 to my next stop. I'm at a Maryland Motor Vehicle office. I'm not here to get my license, but they do have an interesting roadside attraction in front of the building. But first, there's some important safety information on these markers. These markers discuss the history of seatbelts. I'm not sure that seatbelts were used very much until the 1980s, so it kind of surprised me that seatbelts were invented way back in 1885. Take a look at the first seatbelt. Then in 1921, the first child restraints were created. It wasn't until 1956 when automakers added seatbelts. Then in 1964, most cars had seatbelts, but they were rarely used. In the 80s, there were ads featuring crash test dummies. In 1985, New York enacted mandatory seatbelt laws, and in 1995, almost all states required seatbelt usage. And next to those informational markers is this giant crash test dummy. How cool is this? And he is wearing a seatbelt. The crash test dummy is 34 feet tall, and it is painted a very bright yellow color. This was installed in November of 2012 and cost $63,000. This giant thing definitely gets your attention, but that begs the question. Does this giant crash test dummy actually cause distraction? It's just off a busy thoroughfare, which is near the entrance to Interstate 695. So it's really easy to turn your head and look at this giant thing. Just a thought. And speaking of I-695, let's take a look at that. My next stop is at the shores of the Patapsco River, just southwest of Baltimore. From here I'll be able to see what's left of the Francis Scott Key Bridge. The bridge was destroyed on March 26, 2024 at about 1:28 a.m. when a container ship crashed into one of the support piers, collapsing the bridge. The 6 workers on the bridge died and forced the Port of Baltimore to close for nearly 3 months. It had just opened to full operations when this video was filmed. The Francis Scott Key Bridge was built in 1977 and was the second longest continuous truss bridge in the country. It was part of the Interstate 695 loop going around the south and east of Baltimore. That was the one crashed into by the container ship. The death toll would have been much higher if the bridge tender hadn't closed the bridge just seconds before the collision. This is the direction toward Chesapeake Bay, and the barges would cross over the tunnel that I drove through yesterday, then cross under what was the bridge to reach the Port of Baltimore. You can see one of the support piers is gone. There are now plans to replace the bridge and have it operational by fall of 2028. It will cost about $2 billion to build. I'll get one more quick look from one of the piers. This is a popular fishing and crabbing spot. The preliminary design photos for the new bridge are for a wider, longer, and taller suspension bridge with a possible bicycle path. By the time this video is released, what's left of the old bridge will be in the process of being taken down. Well, it's afternoon, so we're pretty hungry, so we decided to go to Locust Point Steamers, which is highly recommended on Yelp, and we're all going to eat some crab. Taking a look at the menu, they have plenty of appetizers to choose from, such as calamari, hush puppies, and fried pickles. They also have crab soup, gardener Caesar salad, and of course, hot steamed crabs in many different sizes. Lots of fried seafood entrees, including soft-shell crab, a crab fluff, fish and chips, and crab cakes. Lots of sandwiches to choose from, like blackened mahi, tuna steak, crab cakes, and oysters. There's also a kids menu, the typical stuff. So we're starting out with some fried pickles. My friends saw this on the menu and they had to get these. It comes with a spicy sauce, and I really hope they enjoy them. We also got this great crab dip, which is made with cream cheese and covered with, I guess, cheddar cheese. And it comes with soft, warm pretzel sticks. I scooped some dip to show you what it looks like under the cheese blanket. It's got a lot of crab in it. We also got 2 crab cakes, which came with a remoulade. We already ate one before the camera filmed this. Sorry, not sorry. This is what the crab cake looks like on the inside. Also, lots of crab in here, and it's very dense. We got some stuffed soft-shell crabs. This was a new and kind of weird experience for us, as we'd never eaten the shell of a crab, but it was actually very tasty. Each crab came with a bag of potato chips with crab seasoning. This is what the stuffing looks like. It's also stuffed with crab, so the crab is stuffed with another crab. It looks like what's in the crab cake. And of course, the main event. We got a dozen medium crabs. It was a little disappointing, as we wanted to get a larger sized crab, but they weren't offered until dinner. But the crabs were still good, lots of flavor, and the meat inside the crabs was very delicious. My friend was very thorough and didn't leave a single speck of crab meat. This was a really good place and everything was delicious. If I return here, I'll make sure to come when the larger crab sizes are offered. Not far from the restaurant is the Inner Harbor. There are lots of hotels, shops, and restaurants, and the aquarium across the water. It's just a few blocks from Camden Yards, where the Baltimore Orioles play, and from M&T Bank Stadium, where the Ravens close their football games. It looks beautiful out today, but the temperatures are pretty warm, about 92 degrees. There are a few places I'm going to see in downtown Baltimore, and traffic is surprisingly not bad right now. Really strange for a large city to have decent traffic. My first stop is at the corner of Baltimore Street, and the cross street is Holiday in one direction and Commerce in the other. Something was invented at this very spot in order to extend a museum's visiting hours. At the small pocket park is a street light, but this is the very first gas-powered street lamp in America. The city of Baltimore ran a gas line through here in 1816. Then a few months later, the streetlight was installed and lit. This light and all the others throughout the city ran on manufactured gas until 1957, when the city converted to electricity to light the city. Artist Rembrandt Peale opened a museum in 1814 and acquired a patent to create light from gas. He used gas lighting throughout his museum so it could stay open during the evening. The gas was created using the fumes from distilling wood and tar. What you see here is a replica of that street lamp. The Baltimore Gas and Electric Company installed this replica in 1991 to to commemorate the 175th anniversary of the first gas street lamp. However, this light is powered by natural gas, so once again, Baltimore has a gas-powered street lamp. Some believe the green pole is the original pole, but there's no proof of that. The plaque just below the light was placed there on the 200th anniversary of the light creation. On the corner of West Fayette and North Green Streets is the Westminster Hall and Burying Ground. I'm in Baltimore, so you know I'm here to visit the final resting place of Edgar Allan Poe. But what's interesting is Edgar Allan Poe was buried here twice, in two different locations in the same cemetery. He was laid to rest at this prominent site in 1875, 26 years after his death. Also at this site are the remains of his wife and cousin, Virginia Clem Poe, and his mother-in-law and aunt, Maria Poe Clem. I'd say Edgar Allan Poe was a complicated literary genius. Poe died of mysterious causes at the age of 40. No one is quite sure of the cause of death. Some think he died from alcoholism, or tuberculosis, maybe depression, and some think he was actually murdered. When Poe died in 1849, he was not held in very high regard, but by 1875, Poe was considered a prominent figure in Baltimore and literary history, so funds were raised to move him to this location in front of the cemetery entrance. Born January 20th, 1809, and died October 7th, 1849, his reburial ceremony was far more celebrated than his first burial, when he was buried in a cheap coffin at an unmarked grave. For the back of the cemetery is the location where Edgar Allan Poe was originally buried. This marker was created by Orrin C. Painter in 1913. Painter was a fan of Edgar Allan Poe, who also constructed the cemetery entrance that's next to the current Poe final resting place. Since there was no record of Poe's exact location when he was first buried, they accidentally exhumed someone else's body. But next to that body was Poe, who was described in excellent and recognizable condition. So the person at the current resting place is in fact Edgar Allan Poe. This was hard to find at first, since I hadn't been here before, but there is actually a path that takes you right there. So let me take you from the original resting place to the front of the cemetery. Actually first, look at this concrete table on the left. This table is actually a tombstone, which is kind of interesting because of its sag. This is very unusual for marble to sag like this and not break. The tombstone belongs to Revolutionary War veteran William Matthews, who died in 1819. This appeared in one of Ripley's Believe It or Not books. There are other similar tombstones that have been straightened out, but not this one. It remains one of those oddities. The marble slab is worked like an old piece of wood. Okay, so continuing on past the sagging marble tombstone, and this passageway eventually leads to the front of the cemetery, and Poe's current resting place is right next to the open gate up there. There's the passageway leading to the original resting place, and then swinging around at the current and more prominent grave marker. I'm not going to the Poe house because traffic right now is increasing and the museum is closed now, but I will see one more thing in Baltimore. Next up, I'm going to yet another college campus. This time it's the University of Baltimore, home of UB the Bee. Get it? UB? The centerpiece of this university is a statue of Edgar Allan Poe. During nighttime Ravens games, the statue is illuminated with purple light. But the statue looks really peculiar to me. Why is he staring at his foot? He kinda looks a little aggravated about it also. The statue was completed in 1921 on its third try. The first attempt was destroyed by a fire. The second try was destroyed due to an earthquake at the sculpture studio. The third try was installed at Wyman Park, but then it was discovered that the inscription from Poe's famous poem The Raven had some typos. So maybe Poe isn't looking at his shoe, he's probably looking down in disgust, wondering to himself how this could possibly have happened. Then a guy got arrested for chiseling out the typos from the inscription. Finally, this poor statue was vandalized and neglected for decades before the Edgar Allan Poe Society recommended it to be moved to Uvalde, where it stands today. Below the statue is the inscription from the Raven, with no typos, dreaming no dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. I think the statue is meant to convey Poe listening intently to music, and the chair has muses that are making the music. But to me, it still looks like he's pissed off looking at his shoe. Now heading westbound on Interstate 70 to see a few more interesting places. Getting close to the city of Frederick, I'm about 55 miles west of Baltimore, and there's this interesting monument. It kind of looks like a stone sculpture with the shape of a genie's bottle. This is called the Jug Bridge Monument. It's not near a bridge now, but its original location was along the National Highway, next to a bridge that crossed the Monocacy River in Frederick. This monument is possibly one of the oldest still standing, constructed in 1809. The bridge collapsed in 1942, and this monument moved to where it sits today in 1965. The Jug Bridge Monument was built by Leonard Harbaugh. There are some interesting rumors to this monument. Now that I'm up close, this kind of looks like a carafe or some sort of other bottle that holds liquid. Many people believe, since the monument looks like a whiskey bottle, that there's an actual jug of whiskey inside the monument. I don't think anyone's cracked this monument open to see if there's actual whiskey inside. I wonder what happens to whiskey when it's stored like this for well over 100 years. There's a marker next to the monument, which shows a picture of the monument next to the original bridge. This mentions the toll house still exists and is a private residence. The shape of the jug has an actual name. It's called a demijohn. How the heck do they come up with that name, demijohn? Whether it has whiskey inside or not, this is an awesome sculpture. I'm sure it's been restored, but it's in really good shape for over 200 years old. Alright, let's keep heading west. Now downtown Frederick. I've never been here, but it looks like a nice city, with lots of stores downtown. But I'm here to see a statue in front of the county courthouse. Here's a question for you. Who was the first president of the United States? What if I told you it may not be George Washington? The first president of the United States was actually John Hanson. Hanson was appointed president by Congress after the Articles of Confederation was ratified in 1781. Remember that after. The Articles authorized Congress and the President to serve a one-year term. John Hanson was instrumental for bringing dissenting factions together to create and then ratify the Articles of Confederation, leading the way for ratification of the Constitution in 1787. John Hanson was born in what was the province of Maryland in 1721. He served in numerous political positions, starting off as sheriff of this county in 1750. He moved to Frederick County in 1769 and immediately went into politics. He's considered a founding father of this country. He paid troops out of his own fortune when he sent them to fight in George Washington's army during the Revolutionary War. He worked with leaders in Maryland to support the Declaration of Independence. He was appointed to the Second Continental Congress in June 1780. Now here's some interesting history. I said earlier, Hanson was the first president appointed after the ratification of the Articles of the Federation. Another founding father, Samuel Huntington, served as president of the Continental Congress before the Articles were ratified. He continued his presidency after the ratification, but he resigned due to poor health, so Thomas McKean was appointed to succeed him. He served until the first official election of president, and that's when John Hanson became president. And then that 9 men served as president before Washington, all prior to the ratification of the Constitution. Historians agree that the modern president started with constitutional elections, but it's interesting to learn what happened in the first 11 years of our country. My final stop of the day takes me to Donut Alley in Hagerstown. Look at that caution sign. The person has a hat and a box of donuts from Krumpe's Donuts. Donut Alley is real. It's a real one-way thoroughfare that leads to the popular donut shop. It's just open for business for the day. I'm not kidding. The shop is open every day from 7 p.m. in the evening to 11 p.m., just 4 hours a day at nighttime. All they serve here is donuts, that's it. Crabby has been a Hagerstown institution for nearly 90 years. Rudolph Krumpe opened his first store in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania in 1934. 2 of his grandsons run the business today. When I was there, they sold about 20 different flavors of donuts and donut holes. Food Network has featured Krumpe's Donuts on their 50 States of Donuts show. They've received lots of awards over the years, and it looks like many beauty pageant winners have been to Krumpe's and love their donuts. Krumpe sells a variety of shirts, coffee mugs, caps, and ground coffee, but they don't sell hot coffee. Here's what we got. 2 chocolate glazed, 1 peanut butter frosted and filled. Those look good. The donut of the day was the strawberry shortcake. It's strawberry filled, vanilla frosted, with sliced strawberries on top. I cannot wait to eat one of each kind of donut. My friend got a dozen donuts. They're bringing them back to Washington, D.C. to share with their roommates. Well, they may eat 1 or 2 before returning to the district. I think this dozen was a lot cheaper than getting the same thing at Dunkin'. I think this was $10, give or take.
Good donut. The donut's killing me. Good donut.
All of us gave Krumpe's a huge thumbs up, so we highly recommend stopping here if you're in this area. Or if you're weird like us, and drive way west just for donuts, which means we have to drive 90 minutes to get back to DC. It was an amazing day, and we all made some great memories. And that's it from Maryland. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye!